Welcome to Burden Hill, a quiet town where nothing happens, which becomes the site of nefarious supernatural forces. And who's gonna step up? Well, none other than the greatest paranormal investigators of all time. Meet the Beasts of Burden, a group of local pets dedicated to protecting their community at any cost. But with haunted doghouses, zombies, and whatever this is, are the friends in way over their heads? It remains to be seen. They've got a lot of heart, but the darkness they face has none. Hey guys, it's your host, Juan, back again today to be your glorified Crypt Keeper. Today we'll be discussing Beasts of Burden. Written by Evan Dorkin with art by Jill Thompson. Just the first volume today. If you guys want me to continue past this point, you have to make sure to let me know in the comment section down below. But yeah, another animal horror series. So, naturally, this is a little bit of a warning if animals occasionally getting hurt is not for you. It's never gratuitous, but things definitely escalate. Anyway, so yeah, this series initially began as a series of short stories from horror anthology books before it ultimately graduated into becoming, a set of multiple full miniseries. Right, and so this video will collect all the original stuff, as well as the first full miniseries. But before we begin, make sure to like the video and to subscribe to the channel in order to stay in the loop with all the latest videos. And if you want to take your support one step further, consider signing up for my membership program here on YouTube. But enough with all that, let's jump right in. Our story opens in the dead of night on 3 dogs huddled together howling. Apparently they've been doing it every night for a week straight, trying to summon a so-called wise dog. But regardless of that, let me first introduce you to our friends here. First, on the left, there is Pugsley, a snarky little pug. And then there's Rex, the Doberman, and Whitey, the Jack Russell Terrier. And also, comfortably lounging nearby is a feline named the Orphan, a stray cat who is a close friend to the dogs. Nevertheless, as he casually grooms himself, he teases his canine pals for ever believing that their silly little ritual would actually summon something. But no sooner are those hasty words spoken than a silhouetted figure steps into the streetlight. It's one of the fabled wise dogs, an English sheepdog of some sort, who benevolently asks the crew what their trouble is exactly. Whitey, intimidated and overwhelmed, vaguely stutters out that their friend Jack is experiencing something horrible. But Pugsley, for his part, just rips the band-aid off, blurting out that Jack claims he has a dead dog living in his yard, and in his opinion, it's all bollocks. The wise dog ponders for a moment, and asks to be taken to the location in question, so naturally, the group leads him there. They find their husky friend, Ace, consoling Jack and keeping him company. The trembling little beagle explains that his family just moved to the neighborhood, and they set him up with a wonderful doghouse. However, he hasn't been able to sleep a single night, because it's haunted. Everything seemed benign enough at first. Jack only noticed this unnatural cold, even on warm nights, but it soon escalated, and there was this ever-present pungent smell, and then he started to hear it. Loud whining every single night. Ace backs Jack up on this, asserting that he too heard cries from next door, but Pugsley dismisses the two as crazy. In his words, it's probably just the house settling. The wise dog silently sniffs the ground around the doghouse before he solemnly announces that he detects great unhappiness that took place here, and, unfortunately, that denotes the presence of a restless spirit. The idea of a ghost sends Jack into a panic, but Rex, the Doberman, confidently assures him that he's not afraid, and if it comes to it, he'll gladly rip a ghost's head off. The wise dog clears his throat, advising everyone to focus up. They need to dig where he points, and if they follow his guidance, it can all be over by the end of the night. Pugsley mutters under his breath that they all must be mad with rabies, but despite his objections, he joins his friends, pawing away into the earth. They dig for hours until the wise dog finally orders them to halt. At the bottom of the pit lies a pile of bones. Dog bones. The sheepdog carefully inspects the tattered collar, estimating it to be about 50 years old and belonging to a dog named Trixie. And as soon as he says that name, a loud wail emanates from the hole. Whitey pees himself right there, but that's nothing compared to what Rex does. Yeah, the biggest, baddest dog in their crew, he runs away as fast as his paws will carry him. The wise one shakes his head, declaring that now the ritual is going to need another member, and so the canines all turn their heads in expectation at the orphan, who is chilling nearby. So, yeah, they all gather in a circle, facing one another, waiting patiently for the spirit to emerge. But nothing's happening. The wise dog chuckles that sometimes things just need a little jolt to get things moving, and so he swiftly kicks the unsuspecting cat into the pit. Almost immediately, the tabby cat flies right back out with all its fur standing up, closely shadowed by the hazy specter of a golden retriever. The wise dog promises the ghost that she's among friends, and so he asks this Trixie how she ended up here. In a whispery voice, Trixie sadly recalls that her family was about to move across the country, but she got very lost chasing a cat. And when she came back, they were gone. But Trixie refused to give up, and she looked for them, and after months of searching, she eventually detected a scent that led her to this neighborhood. She was so excited to be reunited with her loved ones, so she just started running. But she didn't look where she was going. Trixie didn't see the car until it was too late. The drunken driver stumbled out of his vehicle and scooped Trixie up. The man was afraid he killed his neighbor's dog, so he quickly worked to cover it up. The man simply dug a hole and tossed her in, never hesitating a second. But she wasn't quite dead yet. She remembers that heaviness, she still feels it, and so she never fully left. But now it's all okay. Trixie thanks everyone for saving her. She's free at last, and she knows her family is waiting for her, and they won't be so hard to find this time. With tears brimming in their eyes, the animals watch as Trixie ascends to the stars, eventually disappearing among them. In silence, they properly bury her, and as the rain begins to pour, each member leaves to go their own separate way. Jack nestles into his now quiet house, ready to finally sleep. But before he closes his eyes, he catches sight of the orphan sitting drenched outside. He beckons for the stray to come in, And so the two friends snuggle close, warm and peaceful at last. And thus ends our first story. Our next tale opens in the woods on a breezy fall afternoon. For days now, the woods have been eerily empty. No birds, no squirrels, and yet strange sounds echo from it late at night. And as it would happen, one morning, everyone woke up to find the entire town crawling with dozens of jet black cats. The felines strut around like they own the place, a fact our animal friends certainly could not help but notice. The rumor mill is already swirling, and word on the street is that the black cats spit poison and even sent a dog to the vet. The crew huddles around Jack's doghouse, and the beagle mumbles that the strangers smell so unnatural to him for some reason. And even the usually skeptical Pugsley is convinced that something needs to be done here. And then, just like that, like a genie from a bottle, the same wise dog from last time shocks everyone with his unexpected sudden appearance. The sheepdog ominously warns the group that the cats are not what they seem. They're demonic servants to witches. Pugsley scoffs, asking what's next, werewolves? But the wise dog is deadly serious, and he leads the crew on a stealth operation. From behind some bushes, they observe two women coated in stark white makeup, going door to door, handing out strange pamphlets. The wise dog explains that they're members of a pagan cult who worship the ancient Egyptian deity Sekhmet. And this very midnight, everything is going to be in proper alignment for these witches to summon the goddess and harvest her powers. Rex asks what the hell they can do to stop it, and the elder replies that they need to capture one of the black cats and sub in an imposter, because if a ritual is messed up, there are dire consequences to those who performed it. So, seeing as the canines don't exactly have a black cat of their own, they realize they're gonna have to improvise. And so they crudely seized the orphan, who wasn't really paying attention, by the tail. And with the promises that he's about to save the world, they manage to convince the tabby to sit still as Whitey pours a bucket of black paint over him like a waterfall. And meanwhile, the handyman who was on lunch break, he sees the mess they just made with his stuff, and so he cusses the animals out and chases them off the property in rage. But despite that misadventure, a few hours later, the friends set up their trap. They stationed the orphan in a box in the middle of the sidewalk, and when one of the black cats goes to investigate, it gets jumped by the dogs, and it takes all of them to put her down. They lock away their new captive, and she threatens that they're all gonna pay for their base treachery. But they pretty much just ignore the cat and keep themselves busy rubbing herbs on each other in order to mask their scents. Well, all except Rex, that is. The Doberman lowers his head, and he admits that he's way too scared to go near witches. But he offers to stay behind and guard the prisoner instead. Pugsley calls him a scaredy cat, but the wise dog chides the pugnacious pug that they each have their own parts to play. And with that, the animals set off on their perilous journey. It takes hours for them to make it to the right location, so it's well approaching midnight when they finally get there. The wise dog advises the orphan to keep his tail down, as the witch's cats are all girls, and, well, he has some goods to cover up. The orphan is still hesitant about all this, but he doesn't have much time to protest, as he gets summarily kicked down the ledge they're on, tumbling at the feet of a witch, who confuses him for the cat he replaced, Dymphna. And so, with all the players on the field, the cultists began their disturbing ritual, which includes a lot of chanting and strange dances. And then, after a moment of silence, there's a low rumble, followed by a flash of light. It's Sekhmet! The wispy goddess twists into the air, and the witches cackle that with her power they'll be unstoppable. However, they couldn't be more mistaken. Sekhmet snarls that she's only here to punish them for their ignorance. She snaps at the witches that one among them lacks the true devotion, and they're all gonna pay the price for that perfidy. The Egyptian screams that they're going to spend an eternity in the house of Ra, learning what real worship looks like. The wind begins to roar, and the trees sway back and forth as a massive vortex opens up, inhaling the witches like an event horizon. The orphan latches onto a tree branch, desperately trying not to get pulled in. But it snaps, and it all seems over. But then, out of nowhere, Rex leaps through the air, seizing the cat's tail with his mouth. He firmly plunges his paws into the ground, but the force is so strong that he too begins to get dragged. So the rest of the dogs jump into action, pulling each other's tails in a long line like a rope. And what follows is a deafening boom as the animals are thrown into the air. But it's okay. It's over. The portal is gone, and they finally won. And so the story ends, with the exhausted team trudging back home. But, as we see, Rex's bravery was not without cost. Dymphna, the black cat, has escaped, vowing a cruel vengeance. Our third story opens on a bleak scene. A dead dog on the side of the road, no doubt struck by a car. The poor dog is already rotting, and the flies are making quick work of him. From the tree line, our animal companions cautiously watch the scene for any traffic before they quickly move toward the body. The dog wears no collar. He died anonymously, with no name. Ace and Rex carefully latch onto the dog's scruff and drag him with them back into the woods. Gathered in a clearing deep inside is a wide assortment of dogs, respectfully waiting next to a freshly dug grave. This is a funeral. An Irish setter named Red delivers the eulogy, and through it we learn more about the dog lore and cosmology. The canines believe in two primordial entities. The first is the black dog, who comes for everyone eventually. And when that time comes, if things go well, she'll lead you to your eternal freedom among the endless fields governed by the great dog. The animals pray that their unnamed friend should too meet such a fate. And on that note, they bury him, throwing their heads up in mournful howls. After the service concludes, the friend group lingers for a moment before deciding to meet back up at Ace's house in a few hours. But as they depart, they remain painfully unaware that they were being monitored the entire time by a pair of calculating yellow eyes. From the crevices of a withered tree stump, a black cat sleekly leaps. It's Dymphna, the witch's ward. She drops a baggie onto the dirt and rapidly chants in a strange tongue under the moonlight. But meanwhile, we meet back up with our familiar heroes. Right now, they're in a deep discussion about the burial. Rex can't wrap his head around the whole thing. Who in their right mind hangs around a road? It's pointlessly reckless. From beneath the table, the orphan quietly challenges that of course he doesn't understand. None of them know what it's like to be on their own. They have families. They don't know what it's like to be on the constant hunt for food and shelter. You can never stop moving, and nothing is guaranteed. And when survival is contingent on factors outside your control, you stop planning entirely, and you grimly accept whatever happens next. The stunned dogs don't have the faintest idea what to say to all that, but they are bailed out anyway by a loud thump on the fence perimeter. They turn their heads in surprise as the tattered Dimphna scrambles over the top. In a desperate voice, she pleads for help, panting that they're all in immediate danger. Ace snatches the cat by the collar, and the dogs bare their teeth when she reveals that she was at their graveyard. They interrogate her, angrily demanding full and immediate answers. Dimphna takes a deep breath and admits that she was there to raise the dead. She was consumed by the need for revenge for their destruction of her masters, so she plotted to create an undead army that would utterly destroy them. But she fatally miscalculated. Even in death, dogs will never serve cats. They turned on their necromancer, and so she was forced to run for her life, only managing to get away because the monsters stopped to feast on a poor neighborhood dog, leashed outside and unable to escape. The witch cat presses that they'll be here any minute, and they need to come up with a plan quick. However, the dogs are unmoved, and after a moment of silence, Pugsley shouts at Ace to toss her black magic ass out of there. But things quickly take a dark turn, because when Rex swings open the door, they find themselves face to face with a mob of gruesome, half-decayed dogs. Jack and Pugsley throw their weight against the door, but it's futile. The entire fence splinters apart as the monsters burst through like a river. The undead surround Dimphna and are about to tear her to shreds, but Ace stops running and turns back, body slamming one of the freaks and giving her room to escape. Despite everything she's done, the husky knows that it's not right to idly sit back and watch her die. The cat scuttles up a lattice and screams at them not to get bit, or else they'll too become zombies. The orphan climbs up the panel as well, and he asks the witch how to end this madness. But with a defeated look, she admits that, without her kit, she cannot perform a counterspell. And, frankly, she doesn't know if they can be stopped otherwise. And as that's going on, the dogs stuff themselves into Ace's doghouse, shaking with fear as the walking dead lean heavy on the structure, rattling it hard in multiple directions. The orphan looks down and is about to jump into the fray in order to help his friends, but Dimphna abruptly digs her claws into his arm and springs to the ground herself, declaring that for once, she's going to do something decent. She darts around the zombies' legs, taunting them to come and get her, and so the beasts let out a roar and began the chase. Our heroes watch in disbelief as the cat sprints toward the road. She leads the monsters straight into the path of a massive speeding semi-truck. There is a wet, sickening squish as the bodies burst across the asphalt. The driver looks out the window in gross bewilderment, but his companion shouts at him to keep driving before they get sued. But yeah, now there's a large, fleshy blood puddle in the middle of the street. The commotion has obviously woken up the entire neighborhood, and porch lights begin to flick on, so Ace advises everyone to get a move on. But before he goes, the orphan takes one long last look at a clump of matted black fur, already being picked at by flies. No happy endings this time, just dark stains and the haunt of ambiguity. But alas, our tale concludes. We next open on Whitey, charging through the neighborhood at full speed. By now, fall is dying and winter beginning. The trees are bare and the wind is chilling, but Whitey doesn't care. He's on a mission. He tears past Pugsley's house and then Rex's, barking at them to hurry. Something's wrong at Ace's place, and they gotta see this. The animals assemble at the Husky's house, tense and impatient. Ace orders them to lower their voices, and he raises his paw at something moving inside the doghouse. They cannot believe it. It's a human boy, curled up and covered in strange tattoos. Jack wrinkles his nose. He smells blood, and Rex points out that the disheveled kid looks like he just lost a fight. But then they all freeze, and their eyes grow wide, because the boy sits up and directly responds to them that he doesn't appreciate what they're saying about him. Pugsley screams that he's a filthy witch, and the boy panics and tries to calm him down, assuring everyone that he means no harm and can speak the animal tongue only due to his tribal ancestry. The pug is not buying it though, and he indignantly argues that only a witch would say something like that. And so he turns to the others in support for calling the wise dog. But the stranger begs for mercy. He apologizes for hiding in the doghouse and explains that he has nowhere else to go. He ran away from home and would rather die than go back. Ace studies him carefully before reaching some sort of internal conclusion. He reasons that they've taken in strays before, and after all, he personally wouldn't want to go back to his original home, so why not help the boy out? Pugsley cries out, "Oh hell no," and he storms off dramatically, only to be immediately undercut when the wind slaps a newspaper in his face with a front page story about a couple found brutally murdered. But regardless, that was that. And under the cover of darkness, the orphan shows the boy where to find clothes and food. And afterward, Ace stays up all night talking to him and swapping stories. Apparently the kid had a rough and terrible childhood, so he left the moment that he could and never looked back. He lived his life on the road as a drifter, and he met lots of different people and saw lots of different things across his journey. But one day, he met a very peculiar girl, a tattoo artist, obsessed with his skin. And that's the last thing he remembers before waking up naked in the woods with a pentagram carved into his chest. But that was an old life, and this is the dawn of a new chapter. Weeks pass, and Ace and the boy became like long-lost brothers. Every night became the happiest they knew. They frolicked and played together until the morning sun rose, and all the animals loved and accepted the boy as one of their own. And even though Pugsley still yet retained his suspicions, even they were softened after the boy saved the life of a poor pup whose neck got trapped in a plastic ring. And so for a while, the good times reigned. But darkness, it always manages to find its way back in. The boy began to have terrible nightmares of faceless men chasing him through the woods, and in turn he grew more and more unstable and paranoid. Some nights he would just disappear entirely, returning in the early hours, dirty and refusing to speak on where he was. And then one night, he simply never came back at all. The animals spent days searching for him to no avail. It wasn't until exactly last night that they managed to find him. However, they would quickly come to wish that they hadn't. In indescribable horror, they discovered him in someone's yard, crouched over, devouring rabbits with blood smeared across his face like a feral beast. And that brings us to the next evening in the present day. The dogs howl under the full moon in a late attempt to summon the wise dog. But they get unexpectedly interrupted when the boy pops out of nowhere, asking what they're up to. Ace stiffens and replies that they were just trying to call a friend, that's all. The boy smiles and hops down, meaning to join them. He tilts his head to the sky and unleashes a howl so loud it rattles the air. But then his voice suddenly breaks. The kid collapses, coughing and vomiting uncontrollably. He drags himself through the snow toward the doghouse, face contorted in pain. The animals stand paralyzed. Something snaps in the darkness, and Ace alone dares to step forward, doubling over when he sees a pair of hideous red eyes peering back at him. And then, faster than anyone can process, a massive shape explodes out of the doghouse. The heaving monstrosity hunches over in the snow, warm drool pouring through its razor-sharp fangs. There can be no doubt, this creature is the bloodthirsty predator, the werewolf. In a lightning-fast movement, the beast lunges at Ace, slashing him across the chest with its curved claws. The werewolf leans in the husky's face, gleefully announcing that the boy is no more. The creature boasts that he's only letting Ace live because the dog had helped him indirectly. But if they should ever cross paths again, he should know that he'll be eaten on sight. And with that, the monster leaps over the fence and vanishes. The friends desperately try to stop Ace from going after it, but the husky refuses to give up on the boy, and they in turn refuse to give up on Ace. So they all find themselves tracking the beast's footprints to the woods. It doesn't take them long at all to find it, stooped over a meal, face buried in the eviscerated chest of a random man. Jack pleads with Ace that they're just dogs, and this is not something that they're ever supposed to see or be a part of. But the husky is beyond reason, and he launches himself at the werewolf, sinking his teeth into its powerful hide. The animals helplessly watch as the two wrestle in a gray blur, blood splattering across the fresh snow. And then, in the height of the chaos, gunshots start firing from multiple directions at once, striking the two and throwing them off a ledge dozens of feet high. The animals sprint to the edge and peer down at the twitching bodies of Ace and the boy. The kid weakly turns his torso toward Ace and, in great confusion, asks his canine brother what happened. But he hears only in response tired woof sounds. In a shattered voice, the boy observes that he can no longer understand the dog. He reaches out to Ace a final time, but he never quite makes it. His movements cease as the frosty darkness consumes him. A trio of men in tactical gear step out from the trees. They identified the boy as the one they were searching for, and they drag the body away. After a brief discussion, they opt not to waste a silver bullet on putting a dog down. and so Ace slowly bleeds out. Alone he lay in the freezing snow, waning in and out of consciousness. He only half makes out the black silhouette that steps out in front of him. But on the bridge between life and death, one doesn't fret about what they cannot control. We cut to some time later as Jack and the orphan sit alone with a black dog. No, it was never the black dog, the Reaper of Lore. Instead, this is a chocolate lab who we'll come to know as Miranda. She apologizes for not making it sooner. She's only a wise dog apprentice, you see, with limited healing powers. But as the story ends, we find out that her abilities were just great enough to keep Ace alive for traditional veterinarian care. And so we learn that the husky would go on to spend the long winter inside, recovering under the watchful eyes of his family. And as for the boy, well, they never really did speak of him. Springtime has finally come to Burden Hill. The prolonged cold has concluded, and life has exploded out everywhere. Flowers bloom and lush greens dominate. The trio of Rex, Pugsley, and Whitey saunter toward a quaint farm at the edge of town. This is where Red lives, alongside his good friends. The two groups haven't seen each other since winter set in, so now that things have cleared up, it's a good time as any to make a social call. Red inquires into how Ace is doing, and Rex is pleased to share that the Huskies made a full recovery. However, the bad news is that his family doesn't let him roam free anymore. They keep him leashed outside with a heavy-duty steel chain. But outside of that, everything's been surprisingly pretty alright. No strange happenings of any kind. Nothing. But then, as if almost to mock him, the second the Doberman utters those words, Pugsley suddenly yelps. The pug grabs his head and scowls. He was just struck by a frog. The dogs look at it in mild amusement, but only for a second, cause then the sky opens up and hundreds upon hundreds of the amphibians rain down, pelting everything underneath. Within seconds, the plague of frogs is crawling over every inch of the ground, but to everyone's relief, they seem relatively harmless. Whitey draws attention to one of them, slightly larger than the rest, with this jagged, twisted tongue. The canines watch in disgust as it lashes out and drags another frog straight into its mouth. Several more of them start to eat each other as well, and that's well enough for Rex. It's no longer weird, it's just downright wrong. And so it's time to notify the others, so Rex bolts, and Pugsley and Whitey follow, leaving behind a Shiba Inu named Pee-wee, who finds the whole thing kinda cool. And Red, who very much does not. We cut over to Ace's place, where Jack, the orphan, and Miranda are visiting the beleaguered husky. He humbly thanks the apprentice for saving his life, and she tells him that she's just glad he pulled through. Miranda then softly offers her condolences about what happened to the boy, but Ace immediately tenses up and completely shuts down. There is an awkward silence, which Miranda attempts to break by announcing that the wise dog is planning to stop by and visit soon. But before that can go anywhere, Rex and the others come barreling into the yard, screaming about the frogs falling from the sky. They freeze when they realize Miranda's present, and they hastily bow. She waves it off and turns to the matter at hand. The apprentice has heard of paranormal activities from the skies before, but in order to ascertain their true nature, she really needs to see it. So she asks to be taken to the location in question, and Jack and the orphan clamor to go along with on this adventure. But then they all realize that they're being kind of insensitive to their friend who is on lockdown right now. But Ace brushes it off like a good sport, and he wishes them well, watching them depart and trying to ignore the pit of loneliness he feels. When the team arrives at Red's farm, they are dumbfounded. The frogs are gone, as if they were never there. Red clarifies that they all fled into the woods, and Pee-wee decided to chase after them for some reason. So yeah, now they got a missing dog and no idea what they're dealing with. They head into the woods to track Pee-wee down, but nothing immediately sticks out. Well, except for this sharp, sulfuric smell, which overwhelms the senses of everyone but Jack. The beagle alone can cut through the noise, and he locates a torn-up collar. Pee-wee's collar. The animal's stomachs drop, and Miranda attempts to keep everyone cool. She calmly announces that they're going to split into 3 teams and comb the area. If anyone sees anything, they need to howl, and then they'll all come. Right, so Rex, the orphan, and a gray cat named Fluffy go one direction, and Red, Whitey, and Pugsley another, and then Jack and Miranda a third. Anyway, so we follow Team 1 as they hop over tree stumps in a dense area with no clear pathing. Fluffy is incredibly curious about the witch cat she heard so much word about, and so she pesters Orphan with questions about it. But the stray doesn't really want to talk about that incident, so he tries to change the subject. But when he turns back to look at Fluffy, his heart skips a beat. She was right behind him, but now she's nowhere to be seen. The cat freezes and slowly turns his body, locking eyes with something so terrible he nearly collapses on the spot. Rex's howl rips through the forest, and the rest of the dogs drop what they're doing and sprint toward it. They find Rex and the orphan huddled inside a hollow tree, shaking. When asked what happened, the orphan can barely get the words out. Something ate Fluffy. There is a dead silence, and Miranda's face hardens. She charges into the brush, and the others follow. They break into a clearing, and even the apprentice stops cold. Sitting there is a gargantuan frog, kaiju-sized, towering over them like a tank. Miranda bravely steps forward, demanding the creature answer for the disappearances of Pee-wee and Fluffy. There is a wet burp, followed by a deep chuckle. The frog gloats that he has eaten lots of different things. Dogs, cats, men, women, children. And no one stopped him then, and no one will stop him now. Miranda tells the others to stand back. She's about to conjure a spell that she has little experience with. In a confident voice, she cries out a Latin charm. The wind kicks up, and a patch of the frog's skin bursts into flame. But the monster barely reacts. It lazily snuffs out the fire with its tongue, and then whips that same tongue forward, hammering Miranda to the ground and knocking her unconscious. In a slow, sonorous voice, the frog tells the others that they can go, but only if they leave the lab behind for him to eat. Without a leader, panic sets in, and the group begins to fracture. But right when things are about to hit a fever pitch, out of nowhere, Ace crashes into the clearing. The dogs are completely astounded, and the husky faintly suggests that he somehow heard Rex's howl from across town and snapped his way out of the metal chains himself. But those details hardly matter now. The frog shoots out its tongue at Ace with enough force to punch through a tree, and the canine takes the opportunity to chomp down on it like taffy. Ace strains himself, pulling the tongue like a rope, but he is not strong enough by himself. And so the other dogs come to their senses and join their friend, each puncturing a piece and holding on tight. But despite their best efforts, it just isn't good enough, and they slowly but surely get pulled toward the gaping mouth. Pugsley yells out for the orphan to help, and Whitey looks up in disbelief. The cat is sitting atop the monster's head. For Fluffy, he shouts as he unsheaths his sharp claws, burying them into the frog's eye like jelly. There is a loud groan as the creature explodes, spewing the area with putrid green sludge. The animals are disoriented and soaked. The ground around them is once again saturated with hundreds of little frogs. The orphan shouts to kill him, but an old familiar voice informs the cat that won't be necessary. The wise dog has returned. The sheepdog points out that, upon closer look, the frogs are already deformed and dying. He explains that the creature was something known as an aggregate demon, quite rare and quite powerful, which makes what they did today all the more impressive. Rex admits that they had no idea what they were doing, but the wise dog points out that time after time, they have encountered the supernatural head-on, and they have come out on top. And that's why he's here, to formally invite them into the Wise Dog Society as junior apprentices. And, the elder warmly adds, the offer extends to the orphan as well. Pugsley exclaims that this all must be a joke. They're not wise. They're just dogs, and 2 of their friends were just killed. The wise dog acknowledges the tragic loss, but he qualifies that it's absolutely not the case that they're ordinary individuals. Hardly, after everything they've seen and done. And in a more literal sense, the wise dog reveals that Ace, for example, literally has special abilities after he was bitten by that werewolf. But beyond all that, the real pitch is this. There is something deeply wrong going on in Burden Hill. The exponential uptick in paranormal activity should be proof positive enough, but the malevolent nature of such encounters implies a central evil attracting others to it like a magnet. And this evil must be rooted out and destroyed. But the Wise Dog Society is not the force it used to be. The town needs them. The only question is, will they answer its call? One by one, the animals throw down their paws in pledge. All except Pugsley, who still, after a moment of hesitation, joins anyway. After all, what is he going to do all day? And so it's settled. But the celebrations are cut short, because the darkening sky reminds the dogs how much trouble they'll be in if they're not home at the proper time. So they scatter back to town, leaving the orphan to sarcastically remark that he feels safer already. But there can be no doubt, for better or for worse, this is the precipice of a new horizon, much grander than any of them can even begin to understand. We next open on a montage sequence. The newly initiated apprentices spent the course of spring learning the basics of the order. They had many adventures along the way, some more successful than others, but it was enough to make progress in their studies in the principles of magic. However, by summertime, things have dried up massively. And now the friends have resorted to mining the community tip line for leads. The reports on their desk include an annoying cat someone once investigated, food purportedly in the shape of the great dog, and someone even claims that there must be a paranormal reason behind why they eat their own poop. Yeah, so they ain't got nothing, in other words. Pugsley's in the middle of complaining about all this when a Weimaraner meekly pushes through the fence. In a broken voice, she asks the apprentices if they can help her. She's desperate. Her children, they're missing. The story goes that Hazel here had 2 puppies, Ty and Chloe, who were gated safely in her yard. But 2 days ago, she and her humans went inside for a couple minutes, and they left the pups unattended. And within that narrow time frame, the gate was somehow thrown open, and the babies were gone. Hazel has since ran away from home and has spent every second searching for them. But she can't do it alone, and every second is weighing on her. Ace promises that they'll help, and that it's going to be okay. He directs Orphan and Rex to take to the streets and see if the other strays heard anything out of the ordinary. So, that evening, they patrol Hazel's neighborhood, and she comes along, despite their protests that she should catch some sleep. But in any case, none of the orphan's fellow cats know anything of use, but they pledge to keep their eyes open. So now the team needs a new tactic. Orphan thinks through the matter and points out that if the pups are around, they'll inevitably get hungry, right? So why not go where there's food? And this leads them to a greasy alleyway packed with garbage disposals. The cat detects movement in one of the cans, and he flips open the lid, only to get jumped by this unhinged, manic raccoon. It's convinced that they're there to steal his food. Hazel clarifies that she's only looking for her children, but the raccoon is about to straight up attack her anyway, before a firm voice orders him to cease. And that would be the raccoon's mother. She apologizes for her son's bravado, and she sympathetically suggests that they look into a place called the Devil's Well, found on the east side of the woods. So, in the absence of any other signs, that's exactly where they all head next. And as Pugsley complains, the place kinda sucks. It's a stagnant, boggy dead zone with some kind of abandoned structure rotting away in the background. But more critically, there's still no clues. Hazel gazes at her tired reflection in a dark, almost black pond. Ace looks over her shoulder and quietly asks if her children could swim. The grieving mother answers with a hollow no. Pugsley sees where this is going, and he stops them right there. It is simply not possible for them to investigate the bottom of the pond. Jack chimes in that they wouldn't necessarily have to. They could perform a summoning. After all, they know the basics. The pug objects immediately. They've never done that without the wise dog overseeing them, and this isn't the kind of stuff you mess around with. However, his opposition quickly drops the moment he notices that Hazel is still hunched over in the same spot, blankly staring at the water. So the animals form a circle and begin the incantation. They call on the spirits of Ty and Chloe, if present, to show themselves. Everyone holds their breath, but nothing happens. Whitey lets out a sigh of relief, but this is followed by a loud splash as the silvery spirits of the lost dogs burst out of the pond's murky depths. Hazel cries out, but there's no response from the puppies. Jack surmises that they're simply too weak, and so he makes the fateful decision to explicitly invite the spirits into the ritual circle, in order for them to speak through him. In an instant flash, Ty seeps into Jack's face, possessing him. The beagle's eyes go white, and a creaky voice asks Hazel why she left them all alone. Something grabbed them, and it did terrible things, and it put them down there in the dark with the others. Jack begins to twitch, and the spirit of Ty warns that the others are very, very angry. The spirit screams at Chloe to run, and it pours out of Jack and disappears. The water behind them explodes as dozens of animal spirits surge out. Ace yells over the noise for everyone to stay in the circle, but Hazel breaks out after her children. Rex and Ace try to grab her, but in doing so, they too fall out, and all three stop dead in their tracks as the fuming spirits gush into their bodies. The dog's eyes turn blood red, and their lips curl in mean snarls, before they suddenly stop and bolt deep into the woods. The others are left behind, trapped in the circle. Jack is violently shaking on the ground, with foam pouring out of his mouth, and Whitey is having a complete breakdown. They were way over their heads, and now they're paying the price. And it's going to be a hefty one. We see Ace, Rex, and Hazel relentlessly charging through a neighborhood, dead set on a target like a machine, which appears to be a boy playing video games in his room. The dogs straight up jump through a sliding glass door to get to him. They pounce on the kid with their full weight, smothering him before he can even react. All that can be heard is the sound of crunches and the wet smack of flesh. The dogs latch on and maul until all movements cease. The kid's parents pound at the door, screaming his name, David. And, well, we get a good look at the deceased's closet. It's chocked full of bones and newspaper clippings about missing pets. The canines themselves stand frozen, with blood dripping down their faces. But the boy's final heartbeat coincides with the spirits expelling from the three of them. And our friend's terror is matched only by David's parents, who shriek his name as they flee into the night. And meanwhile, back at Devil's Well, the spirits are swooping dangerously close. Dodging them left and right, the orphan tries his best to conjure a spell, but nothing's working. Pugsley yells at him for even trying, and he shouts that there was never anything special about them in the first place. Whitey begs them to stop, and all the stress provokes him to shout as loud as he can the first spell he can remember. And it actually works. The spirits are dispelled. But, as the orphan points out, they didn't go back into the water. The animals peer into the darkened forest as dozens of glowing eyes flick on in the shadows. The spirits have possessed every woodland creature in the area, and they slowly converge on our shaking heroes with snapping jaws. But then, from the top of a ledge, Hazel appears, urging them to stop. She announces that their killer is dead, and now it's time to go home. She offers the spirits a deal: return to the pond whence they came, and she'll keep them safe and warm until the great dog rightfully claims them. She promises them that they don't have to be afraid anymore, and with that, Hazel suddenly dives into the pond. Ace cries out her name and plunges in after her, and the spirits simultaneously funnel out of the creatures into the water. For the next few seconds, all anyone can hear is their own heartbeats, and then, by the hands of fate, Ace finally emerges, gasping for air. In between coughs, the husky orders them to destroy the circle and clear out immediately. He and Rex are in serious trouble. Whitey timidly asks how bad they messed up, to which Ace gravely answers that it's really, really bad. But thankfully, as we learn, no one ever did link the killing to Rex and Ace. In fact, the newspapers didn't really have any idea what to make of it all. The obituary characterized this David figure as a high school student and a loner, and no other official word was spoken. For his part, Jack eventually came to, days later, mostly all right. All of them were only mostly all right. They know what happened and what it meant, and it's not going to be something they're ever going to forget. And so the tale concludes on the haunting image of Hazel peacefully laying at the bottom of Devil's Well, clutching her babies, surrounded by an unseemly number of drowned victims who never made it home. Did any of them ever see the light? The next tale begins curiously. The orphan is getting outfitted with ointments and gear like he's at Q Branch or something. Miranda gives him this special plaster for his feet, which allow him to grip wet surfaces, as well as charmed moss that makes his fur glow in the dark. He's going on a special mission, one that he gave himself. You see, ever since the zombie dog incident, he's had this deep gut feeling that Dimphna, the black cat, didn't actually die like they thought she did that day. Of course, all the dogs think he's crazy. They saw the witch run in front of that semi with the rest of them creatures. Only Miranda encourages the cat to pursue his intuition, but of course, she wasn't at the original event. But in any case, Orphan approaches the sewer drain, and a cadre of nearby cats gossip about him. They assume that he's doing all this cause he was enraptured by the witch's feminine wiles. Regardless, one among them, this black and white cat, he hops down the fence and positions himself next to the stray. This is the getaway kid, a kind of daredevil, who agreed to accompany the orphan on his investigation. And as he tells Miranda, he doesn't need any fancy magical gadgets to get himself out of any situation. And so they're off. The cats twist their bodies through the narrow opening, and down they go. And, well, it's a sewer all right. Large subterranean tunnels, dirty, noxious smells, but at least the glow-in-the-dark moss works. They spend what feels like hours traversing through rancid tunnels. The kid, meanwhile, teases Orphan that the girl must be something real special to him if he's willing to go through all this just for her. The tabby insists that it's not like that at all. You see, he's been having these ominous dreams, and she's been a part of them. And the cats are so distracted by this conversation that they wind up stepping directly on a pile of writhing cockroaches. The insects scatter, revealing a certain red gemstone underneath. The same one Dimphna had on her collar. She's still alive. Or at least was at one point. But whatever the case, the felines get jump-scared by a loud moan that echoes through the sewers. One that sounds disturbingly almost human. The kid wants to get the hell out, but to his dismay, Orphan wants to move closer toward the sound. And so the kid reluctantly tags along, if only to maintain his reputation for daring. So they wander around the underground for a while. They eventually locate the origin of the sound, kind of, emanating from underneath a cluster of pipes. The cats peer down and find a bunch of screeching rats dancing around unnaturally in some kind of ritual. But before they can even process that shit, they get jumped by a rat guard that snuck up on them. The rodents below scream that they're spies, and dozens of rats emerge out of every crevice, chasing after our heroes in a massive wave. Orphan and kid run for their lives, and in the chaos, they wind up getting separated into two different directions. With the rats right on his tail, Orphan desperately leaps into a drainage pipe, but he only manages to make a few steps before the entire bottom cracks and he plummets dozens of feet down into the dark. But if you know anything about cats, you know that they always land on their feet. The orphan finds himself in a large, open chamber, filled to the brim with brittle white bones. He doesn't get time to recover before the bones part and an enormous rat, bigger than him, claws its way out. The monster launches itself at him with full force, and that's the last thing the orphan sees before he loses consciousness. He eventually awakens sometime later. His vision is blurry at first, and the only thing he can make out is a dark shadow standing over him. It's Dimphna, who asks what in Sekhmet's name he's doing there. The orphan tries to play it cool, claiming he's only here to investigate rats. Dimphna cuts through the story immediately, suggesting that he really came here looking for her. Flustered, the stray denies this in the strongest possible terms, explaining that he's actually now a junior apprentice in the Wise Dog Society, and this was just a routine mission. The black cat can't help but laugh at the absurdity of the order letting a cat in, but she lets him off the hook for now. The orphan studies her a moment and quietly remarks that he knew she survived. Dimphna sighs. Sometimes she wishes she hadn't. You see, her plan was successful at first. She had led the zombies to their demise and convincingly faked her own death. She tumbled into the sewers, and that's when she realized she had been bitten. They had gotten her tail, and it was just a matter of time until she succumbed to the infection. But that's when the rats found her. When they did the one thing that could save her life, they chewed Dimphna's tail off above the infection point. And ever since then, she's been forced into servitude by the rodents, and whatever mysterious voice it is that they worship. Stunned, the orphan asks why she didn't just cast a spell on them and escape. Dimphna shakes her head. Witch magic doesn't work like that. They cannot conjure things without certain items or materials first, and there's nothing down here. Or at least there wasn't. But the conversation is cut off there. A mean-looking rat barges in, informing them that the king wants to see them now. And yeah, seated on a throne is a literal rat king, a collection of bodies all knotted by the tail. The king accuses Orphan of coming here to murder them and prevent the quote-unquote great revenge that's been promised to them. The rats preach that the voice chose them, and soon the rat kingdom will rule the surface world. And then, to the stray's absolute horror, a team of rodents drag the beaten getaway kid into the room. The king delivers his cold ultimatum. Reveal who sent them, or else the kid will be eaten alive on the spot. The orphan frantically shouts that no one sent him, and he didn't even know they existed before this, which is the truth, but the king doesn't buy it. It gives the go-ahead, and the getaway kid starts screaming in pain. Dimphna moves quick, thrusting her head at Orphan and looking up the glowing moss on his chest. She starts hacking, and she spits a glob of it at the Rat King. The witch raises her voice and bellows out the first spell she's uttered in months. The room explodes in a blinding white flash, and the two cats race away as fast as they can. The orphan looks back for the kid, but Dimphna yells that he's on his own. The rats, meanwhile, recover, and the giant one squeals at the masses to seize the felines at whatever cost. The cats tear through the maze-like terrain like Temple Run, trying to shake off their pursuers as best they can. Dimphna uses her knowledge of the layout to guide them to an escape tunnel through which they army crawl. And Then they finally see it, a stream of glorious light shining through a hatch. But, unfortunately, the spell was quite taxing on the witch, and she's fading fast. And what's worse, the giant rat has caught up to them, and it rams the orphan like a bull. It thrashes its claws against Orphan's chest, but he fights back, sinking his teeth into the rat's neck, while Dimphna hurls back up the rest of the moss and shoots it at his eye. And so with her spell, it gets burned right out of the rat's socket. The orphan flies up the ladder, urging Dimphna to hurry as the endless horde closes in. But she doesn't have the strength to make it all the way, so the stray has her latch onto his back, and he carries them both to the top. They just barely miss the eyeless rat, who roars at them that this isn't over, and it won't be until the day that they're put down and dead. When they get to the surface, the cats just run, and they don't stop until they physically cannot go any longer. Dimphna gazes up in joy at the bright moon she never thought she would see again. The orphan steps up to her and gently rubs his head on her face. Just for warmth, of course, he insists. And so the issue ends as we make out in the background a smirking face inspecting the pair from a distance. It's the kid, who I suppose truly did get away after all. Our final story begins with our good friend Pugsley loudly ranting about the duplicity of Dimphna. It's been a couple weeks since her grand return, and let's just say that not all has been forgiven between her and the dogs. Obviously, the orphan vouches for her, but they still find her behavior shady as hell. She often disappears at night, and they have certainly not forgotten that time she tried to kill them. Apparently, even the affable Miranda doesn't like her. In Pugsley's eyes, animals never change their markings. Whitey and Ace agree with the pug implicitly, but even so, they find his dramatic tone to be a little excessive right now. Tonight, they're on a fire team patrol sweep alongside Red, investigating hazy reports that the spirits of Ty and Chloe are still active in these woods. They don't find any evidence of that, but the entire catastrophe is still very raw for them, so they find themselves spacing out and sinking deep into those unhappy memories. Ace looks to the stars and wistfully recounts the days when all they used to do was sleep and eat, before they carried these little scars with them. But the truth is that the past is always brighter in retrospect, and regardless of that, a duty taken that leads you on a greater path may well be the highest fulfillment of them all. Or so we shall see. There is a loud rustle from the bushes, and a traumatized-looking dog wanders into the clearing. The apprentices ask if he's okay, but then they see that the dog is dragging a severed human arm from its leash. Whitey is the one who makes the howl for the others. He already felt like screaming. And so the rest of the team assembles. They gather around the petrified stranger and come to the realization that they actually know him. His name is Diggs, and they didn't recognize him because his face is usually completely black. Something scared him so bad, it turned his fur white as ash. Whitey dimly remarks that Pugsley was just saying that animals can't change, and this prompts the irascible Pug to smack him upside for the misrepresentation. He emphasizes that he was strictly speaking about that stupid witch cat. And it's here where the orphan loses it. He has absolutely had it with Pugsley's constant snide remarks and the trash talking about Dymphna. Miranda steps between the two and asks if they realize that she's above them right now, listening to everything they're saying. And sure enough, hiding in the trees is the familiar black cat. She gets called a sneak and a spy, and Ace demands an explanation at once. But Dymphna insists that she doesn't owe anyone here anything. So she wishes them good luck and ominously expresses her hope that none of them die tonight. And with that, she defiantly struts off. Orphan is about to go after her, but just then, Diggs comes too. The poor dog babbles before finding the words to recount the horror that befell him. You see, he was on his regular night walk with his human companion, a kindly man and a gravekeeper by trade. And on their trek through the cemetery, they discovered a freshly dug pit where there shouldn't have been one. The man leaned over it with his flashlight, and that's when the unthinkable happened. Something grabbed him and pulled him into the hole, kicking and screaming. And of course, Diggs began to be dragged by the leash as well. He made it to the edge of the pit, and he was forced to stare into the abyss. He witnessed his human being torn to shreds and swallowed up by the ground itself. Diggs recoiled so hard he managed to get away, and that's the last thing he remembers. Miranda apologizes for having to ask this, but they need to be taken to the pit. That's the only way they can hopefully find justice for him. Diggs shudders. He tells them that he'll set them on the right path, but after what he's seen, he could never go back. So, with eyes peeled, the apprentices grimly study the crime scene. There is no body, and the sterile gravestones reflect back nothing at them. Ace winds up finding a blood trail, which they begin to slowly track through the cemetery. They hear a strange cry that rings through the air, which Orphan identifies as similar to the voice he heard in the sewers. The animals pick up the pace, running up a hill and hard stopping when they see what's on the other side. Hideous golem creatures made out of dirt and bones shuffle around an exhumed grave, sprinkling in blood and intestines. Miranda whispers that she's never seen anything like this, but if she had to wager, she'd bet this is a resurrection. And she couldn't be more right. A dirty hand claws its way out of the grave, clutching a bottle of whiskey. It's this guy. A greasy-looking chap who is basically brought back to life through another person's body parts, Hellraiser style. Anyway, the guy slobbers around a bit, excited that he of all people was deemed worthy to bring back. He fumbles around in his jacket and pulls out a spell book to prove his seriousness to the golems. But the creatures are distracted. They have detected our heroes. Miranda shouts at him to return to the grave where he belongs. And, most disturbingly, public school Snape here can understand the canine, and he clocks them all as wise dog associates. He flips through his book and reads out a spell, which forces Miranda to keel over and vomit blood. The apprentices charge at the villain in rage, but unfortunately, they get stopped. The golems form a perimeter around the man and shoot dirt from their skulls at the animals. Ace manages to break through the torrent, and he throws himself on top of the man with teeth bared. And, well, whatever he does next, it's so savage even his friends are shocked beyond belief. Ace stands over the man coated in blood, and the guy uses his remaining strength to drag himself back to the grave. He swears at the dogs for killing him again, and he falls into the pit. The golems begin to shriek, but they don't attack. The creatures fold themselves into the grave and fill it up, and just like that, it seems to be over. But the victory is ultimately hollow. There is a chant from beneath the earth, and the ground begins to rumble. The floor beneath the animals splits apart like an earthquake as something pushes its way out from the underground. The warlock is resurrected again, this time merging with the skull golems in a monstrous, ungodly configuration. It screams that they're all going to die, and Pugsley is weightlessly flung through the air. For once, the wisecracking Pug is completely silent. Miranda tries her best to muster up the strength to avenge her incapacitated friend. She unleashes a fire charm, but the flame is just too weak, and the villain continues his onslaught, pummeling Red and taking him off the table as well. The rest of the animals are unable to penetrate the packed dirt, and the occult monster rips gravestones up from the ground to squash them with. All the apprentices can do is defensively dodge attacks, but they don't have infinite endurance to do this forever. And then, from the sidelines, a voice casually notifies them that Earth armor is physically uncrackable, so they're gonna need to try something else. It's Dimphna, who makes it clear that she only came back for the orphan. She turns to Miranda and orders her to perform another fire spell. The lab insists that it didn't work before, but Dimphna tells her to just do it. So the apprentices form a quick circle, which will allow their powers to flow through them to Miranda. But Rex, Ace, and Orphan are trapped battling the warlock. With all her might, Miranda spouts the spell with so much power her eyes briefly become energy. But once again, only a small flame sprouts. However, then Dimphna utters her curse, and the entire golem ignites. The man screams bloody murder as the flesh sizzles off his bones in a white-hot inferno. Dimphna gazes resolutely at the flickering flames. She murmurs that witches cannot conjure fire, but they sure as hell can make it a lot nastier. The apprentices aren't really sure what to do next from here. They may have defeated the forces of evil this time, but something sent the golems to resurrect the man, and they don't know what it was or why it did it. And they don't know how it all connects to the voice in the sewers. And so our final story ends with Ace putting to words the black truth. This isn't the end. Their work is not yet finished, and the war has only just begun. But until then, we must bid farewell to our brave beasts of burden.
Kowalski, analysis.
So, that was Beasts of Burden. What did you guys think? Who is your favorite character? Also, was this video too dense? I quickly discovered while I was editing this that each story being kind of self-contained, with its own setup, narrative arc, and conclusion, that doing that times 8 might be a little exhausting, stacked back to back. But I have no idea, so you guys tell me. I really hope you enjoyed it, though. If you did enjoy it, I would seriously consider buying the omnibus book here, because it was only like $25. And it contains the entire series in one book, all 4 volumes. That's a pretty good deal. I'll be upfront with you, though. The central mystery and plot has not been followed up on for like 7 years. There was an interview I watched from like last summer where the author, Evan Dorkin, explicitly stated that the series wasn't over yet and that he's going to return. But yeah, as of now, it's kind of unresolved. But yeah. Anyway, I'll share some of my thoughts on the first volume here. In short, I thought it was a lot of fun. Does the characters being animals kind of distort my perception and cloud it with sentimentality? I mean, probably. You see, characters being animals kind of hijacks your brain because you automatically have a positive association when you see them. So, like, for example, like the visual stimulus is it's just like impossible to overcome. So, like, when you see an image of a pug, you project your idea and experience in real life with pugs onto the character before you register that it's acting in an unpug-like way by, like speaking or something. Anyway, I mean, I kind of find this sort of like mental preconditioning stuff to be dangerous in principle, even if obviously in this particular case it's not at all malicious or sinister. Sorry, I don't mean to be a killjoy. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah. In any event, like I said, I enjoyed it. I think there's a good cast of characters and personalities people can engage with. That said, I do have a minor quibble, though. I think the amount of recurring characters we follow kind of balloons to the point where some of them are basically permanently consigned to be on the sidelines. Think of like Red, for instance. He's just kind of like there. But in terms of positives, it would also be criminal not to mention the art by Jill Thompson. It's absolutely wonderful stuff. She really perfectly captured the whimsy of the world so well, it's hard to imagine it in any other register. Which is ultimately unsurprising because Dorkin said that he wrote the first story with her art in mind. Also, if you don't know, these are hand-painted watercolor illustrations, which is incredibly uncommon for comic book interiors. But before I close the video out, a final thing I'll talk about is the horror element in Beasts of Burden. Or at least what I take it to be for me personally. Right? Because we've obviously covered a lot of pretty extreme stuff, so I can't really be shocked by blood and gore alone. But what unsettles me a little in this book is some of the kind of understated, unaddressed contrasts within it. Basically, the story randomly jumps between pure fairy tale fantasy and like ultra bleak disaster. So like the fairy tale ones include stuff like the haunted doghouse episode as well as the sewer one. Basically, where the plot is simple and straightforward, and everyone kind of comes through by the end, despite the trials that they go through. Yeah, we kind of oscillate between stuff like that and stories like the Dog Mother one, where, our friendly heroes that we've come to love literally maul a kid to death who also happened to be drowning animals in a pond in his free time. And even in some other arcs, like the Frog one, they still kind of retain the structure of like a lighter fairy tale story, but it's like papering over darkness that no one's really commenting on. Like in that Frog one, against all odds, they defeat the beast and get initiated into this magical order. And that's awesome. That's epic. Yay. But also two of their friends were eaten. And this kind of brings me to my final, slight disturbance. which is the way that the animals treat each other, which is kind of callous and instrumental. And that's really jarring and never really focused on. Like, let's go back to that frog story, for example, because I didn't really focus on it when I was doing the narration, but like half the crew was ready to bail on Miranda when she got knocked out by the frog. Or like another example is that sewer story with Dimphna and the orphan. They were like, I guess we abandoned the getaway kid and he might have died. Oh, well. Like, bruh. It's unsettling, okay? Because they're being all, sweet and saccharine, but there's this literal skeletons in the closet element. And I just don't do it. I don't do it, okay? But that about does it for today's video. I did not intend for this video to become as long as it did. It basically became a mega video. It just kind of happened that way. I already promised that the next one was going to be a crossed episode, and that one was going to be a mega episode. I don't know. It just gave me a minute for any new stuff. But in the meantime, I might do another movie review, or maybe even like a super cut of something I did before. I mean, I'll figure it out, okay? But until then, my friends, I will thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good one.